Hello, it's Moira here. I wrote something today that felt needed some explanation, taking it forward. And I wrote that deconditioning is over. And people asked what I meant. And I want to try and explain it a little bit. So, this is for you if you are interested in human design. And actually, if you're just interested in life and wanting to bring awareness to your life, because basically that's what human design is. And human design has an edge to me, which is that it shows us how to move forward in our lives. And that's the bit that I like. So there is in the world, as we know it, we are in the age of transformation. The healing modalities have grown exponentially. There are books, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk and by Gabor Mate, all with the title The Body in it. We are coming into the body. We are moving away from the mind and coming into the body. And it's across so many different healing modalities. And one of the things about them is that they are moving ahead. We all are, all the time. We're all moving ahead, well rooted in the past. Those two things exist inside ourselves. So there is what I'm going to call a negative and a reductionist way of looking at things. So the reductionist way of looking at things is to go in and look at our wounds and look at our traumas. And we can get caught up in looking at them. I have been too, not just you. This isn't exclusive to everybody other than me. Of course not. The reason I know it is because I've lived it. There is no other magic behind it. This is me talking from my lived experience. So when we look at something, we go in and we reduce it as a world way of doing it. Where did that come from? And in a sense, that reductionist view is also part of the story. So you feel this, what is the story about it? So we find a story that expresses something when we are holistic beings. And probably that story had tentacles or a web, was part of something much greater than simply that story. The story that we attribute to that particular trauma probably grew from another one and another one and another one. You know, we can source them right back to childhood and sometimes inherited patterns. You know, for example, I was at 9 years old, I was abandoned in boarding school. And so self-abandonment has been something for me to look at all my life. And the other factor here is our negative bias. So we as human beings have a negative bias. We are kind of programmed almost to complain. And this was a survival. This was a survival practice. You know, you would go somewhere way, way, way back into the wild and you would look around for what was negative and what was dangerous and say, oh, that needs attention and that needs attention. So it had a reason. It had a powerful reason to look at the negative bias. But we don't need that anymore. But we are definitely programmed to lean towards the negative and not the positive. Quite a lot of studies have shown that if you have two hugely impactful events in your life, and even if the positive event is bigger than the negative event, we will lean towards the negative event. It will reappear in our memories in a way the positive event doesn't. And it's not our fault. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. I certainly do it. I'm a projector, so that is part of the road of bitterness. I'm emotional, so nowadays I take it from a different point of view. I when it returns to me, I use it to look at again. I can look at it again and again, and turn the negative into a positive. But that takes quite a lot to do. But that is the kind of learning with this negative bias, is to none of these things are bad as long as we hold them with awareness, really. And so that brings me to deconditioning. So the word deconditioning was given to us by Ra Uru Ha, who the messenger of human design. And he set up human design for the not self, what he called. So for the conditioned part of us to see and respond to. Now, deconditioning, the very word carries the energy, the reductionist energy, and the negative energy with it. Now, for me, if somebody says to me, why don't you come here, Moira? Come over here. We're going to have a negativity party. We're going to just completely wallow in all our misery. And we're going to sit down and talk about how negative it is. I wouldn't really want to do it. I would just go, thank you very much. And when I find myself in those kind of parties, I sort of try and slide out the door. Because it's not fun. It's not exciting. To me, it's contracting. It's not drawing me into life. It's meaning that I have a lot of work to do to go back and look at everything that has been. That's an enormous task. It's an enormous task. And it's daunting. Where do I begin? And where's my incentive? Oh, I get to be me. Mm-hmm. Is that an incentive? Yeah, it is. If there is enough hurt not being me, then it is an incentive. However, I've noticed a shift recently. Just an energy shift in the world. I don't know how else to describe it. We are less than 2 years from 2027, where the clock of time changes. And I guess since February, coming up to February, and since February, I've felt it more profoundly. I've been aware of almost a sort of despair creeping in, a lack of hope, a flatness. People have described it to me as a burnout in themselves. And I wondered if we were tired of looking back this way. We were tired of the process of deconditioning, because this era that we're in, the age of transformation, is an era. It has been intense and it will end. I remember reading Ra say, after 2027, it would be very difficult to transform, meaning the energy for it would go. Can you feel that? Have you felt that inside yourself at all? Have you felt that in the world around you at all? And it's made me believe, see, whatever word we want here, that it is time to no longer decondition. It is time to no longer be looking back at the negative, the reductionist. Yes, we will still decondition, but it's not the word that we're going to use. We are 9-centered beings. We are not 7-centered beings. Deconditioning is for 7-centered beings. Living as a 9-centered being is for us now. That means joy, trust, ecstasy, living as an orgasmic being. And when I say orgasmic, I don't mean just sexual. I mean somebody that experiences life full of playful joy and trust. And that is what will draw us into the future, draw us into living who we are. And yes, on the way, when we have a dream, of what we want to be playful and joyful, all the things in us that have always stopped us, they will come up to be looked at. They will come up to be deconditioned by being looked at, by shining the light of awareness on them. But the time for having the words of looking back seems to me to be fading to the point where it is almost over. And it feels to me that it is time to live as a nine-centered being and to embrace all of that and to visualize it, visualize what we are doing as that. Because that brings hope, that brings joy, that brings something that we can want and dream about. And if you are into human design and you are listening to me, I wonder whether that is why Pluto is in gate 41. For us to dream the good dream, dream the fantasy of living as a nine-centered being, dream the fantasy of trust, of surrender, and let it come without dictating in any way whatsoever how that is going to come. I feel I have said a lot in a relatively short space of time. This is where I am going. I am halfway creating half thoughts. I didn't know that I had all of this as clearly as I do inside me, ready to come out. And I'm creating things to support people who want to live this way, who want to find this in themselves. We have 2 years. Let's make the most of it. Take care.